Hey everyone, we are live. It is Kim and Morna. Hey Kim.
Hello, welcome.
Hello, and welcome to the breathing space. Oh, okay, I've got it on my phone. I should probably stop that. So we are actually live because
It's working.
it's working.
That's so great.
Working. Okay, enough hilarity because today we're going to talk about skillfully navigating tough times, and we're going to get to that in a moment. But before we do, let's just take a moment to pause, and I'm going to put my feet on the ground, and I invite you to do the same. If you're joining us, if you're watching live, say hi in a moment. If you're watching the replay, let's just take a moment to find ourselves in this space together. Feel your feet on the ground. Just notice where you are. If you're driving, take notice of your surroundings. Just take a breath. So, the topic this week is skillfully navigating tough times. And there's a couple of reasons why this topic has come up. One is really just a reflection of certainly where my life is at, and actually where many of the members in our Life Design Lab, where their lives are at. And many of us are navigating some of the more challenging times in life. So for me personally, I've got elderly parents who are nearing the end of their life and require different levels of care. They're in another country. I have two ill teenagers, one suffering from emotional ill health and one suffering from physical ill health, and just a bunch of stuff happening all at the same time. And I feel like I'm right in it. And so we wanted to have a conversation about this idea of these times in our lives, these universal periods that we all face, right, Kim?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's human experience.
Right, it's kind of basic human experience, and yet it can often feel like we're the only one going through what we're going through. So we want to talk a little bit about this, and the first thing I want to talk about is actually busting this idea of even the primary question that I posed: how do we skillfully navigate tough times? What does it even mean to skillfully navigate? And in our pre-show chat, Kim and I always meet, and we kind of have the show before the show, which we should probably record, Kim, because they're
it's genius, really.
Right. Sometimes it's better than the actual show, the show before the show. We were talking about this idea of what does it mean to skillfully navigate tough times, and what is the idea that we're presented? What are the waters that we swim in, especially the kind of social media idea that we could perhaps positive think or our way out of things? Like, what's the goal when we're navigating tough times, when we're going through tough times? Is it to be doing this? Is it to have it all together? What does it actually mean? And the first thing I want to say about it, and I'm curious as to your ideas on this, Kim, is that life is sometimes really, really difficult. It's incredibly challenging, and sometimes it's very painful, and we're experiencing and feeling a lot of pain, and yet our modern world really doesn't make space for that. It doesn't make space for us to actually have the feelings that we're experiencing. And the one of the other questions I asked in the kind of preamble to the show is, why do we sometimes stop doing the very things that we know support us in the times we need them most? And I'm kind of also inclined to bust that open, because I've been thinking about my own pattern. So, I have a fairly well-developed pattern of knowing the things that I need to do that on a day-to-day basis kind of keep me in the way, showing up in the world in the way that I want and need to show up. And they work super well when life is kind of at a normal kind of up and down, right? But when the shit really hits the fan and I'm in a situation like I am right now, those things, firstly, I don't feel inclined to necessarily do them. And secondly, they don't necessarily work. And I might need something else. And I'm curious as to what's coming up for you, Kim.
Well, I want to say first off, before I get into my ramble, is it's really interesting how I'm seeing this theme with people in my life. And I'm kind of in a situation right now where my waters are kind of steady. So it's interesting to be on this side when I'm typically on your side, where I'm in chaos and grief, super grief, as I like to call it, or super grief. Yeah. So I think it's
actually, Kim, can you say more about that before you move on? About
super grief.
Yeah.
And I don't even know. It came up in the pre-show talk,
yeah, right.
where I just said super grief, and I think it's because it's the depth of it, because grief just doesn't feel like enough when you're in multiple things coming at you, or multiple griefs, I guess, where it's not just one thing, it's like so much that's in the swirl. It's like the perfect storm, right? Of all factors, the superstorm. And I think what's really present for me right in this moment is how, when someone is in more of a calm waters, can see kind of the train wreck about to happen with someone that they care about, right? And that happened for me personally, where I was like kind of going in the roller coaster of ups and downs and postpartum depression, and I was hanging on by a thread, and it took someone pivotal in my life being like, you know what, Kim, you're not okay. Like, you're not okay. It's time to like get some help. And I think what happens is that we don't tap into the stuff we know, because we're in another frame of reference. We're in another body or consciousness or something. Like, we're just not in that same. I can't put words to it. Do you have words to it?
I've got a few words coming up, and they actually they stem from the visualization you just gave of being in the storm. I imagine you're in your boat. I'm not even imagining a boat. For some reason I'm imagining like one with a big old wheel, and
right, like the pirate ship.
and when you're in the smooth waters, you've prepared the boat. You've got the things that you need on the boat already. You've got so for example, you've got some life preservers. You've got a life raft. Hopefully you've got a first aid kit. You've got some emergency supplies. Maybe you've got an extra store of water, food, whatever. You've got these things so that in the emergency situation, in the crisis situation, if the storm suddenly hits or you see the storm coming, you're able to, what you need is within reach. So you're not thinking, oh no, now I'm in the storm, I've got to figure out what I need in my emergency kit, and then I've got to go and try and put it together, because you're not going to be able to.
Well, that's, if I could just jump in, and the analogy that's coming to mind, where I hear it all the time, especially in the summertime, is where a canoe tips over and they're like, oh, they weren't wearing their life jackets, but they were in the boat, and they end up drowning because they weren't actually wearing them. So it's the same thing, where it's like, how prepared are you? What's in that kit, and are you either wearing it ready to go in the case of, or do you have somebody that can hand it to you or tap you on the shoulder? I guess I'm just in this really present moment of like going back to those times of super grief and saying, okay, what was it that I needed in those moments, and what would I take with me now going into the next phase of challenge, which I know it's going to be there. I mean, that's just part of life, right?
It's true. It's it's universal, and I know for me that what I'm needing right now is space. And I was saying this in the pre-show. I need space to cry. I need space to feel. What I actually don't need is to try and meditate myself away from my feelings. That's not even the right expression that I want to say, but I know that right now I need to create more space to be able to really feel what I'm feeling, and to be in that pain,
and to not know, right?
and to not know. And so in order to do that, I actually need some of the more practical things in my life taken care of. And, because I don't, I can only always really speak to my own experience, but often when we're in these overwhelming spaces, our brain doesn't work in the same way that it does when the waters are clear.
Right.
And so, so we need to be able to create that space for ourselves. And you were saying this earlier, that I feel like we need, and Karen's saying, yeah, space to feel, yes. And being able to tune in the moment, to what you need and what is your capacity and who can help with some of the to-do list pieces. And I think the thing about having some kind of emergency kit, and it would be interesting for us to even talk about what would be in that from a, emotional self-care point of view, because the thing about an emergency kit is that it's already put together, and you can either just hand it to someone else, here's the emergency kit, there's Band-Aids in there, go and I'm thinking right now, I don't necessarily even have the energy to be able to know what needs to be delegated, let alone delegate it. So if you're able to give some thought to that, so that in more challenging times, you've got people who can instantly maybe pick up things that need to be picked up, literally and figuratively. Just even this question that I put in the show notes beforehand, and we've been having some of this kind of conversation in our lab. Do you ask for support, or do you hunker down and try and tough it out? And I don't know whether those are the only two options. I think there are many other options in between. But one thing I've noticed about this whole idea of asking for support is that, firstly, it seems to be an expectation that we're able to ask for support, when I'm not sure if we actually sometimes even know what we need to ask support for. And do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. It's like when somebody passes away and you're like, oh, reach out if you need anything. It's like, and I find myself doing that too, because, whereas now I'm coming to the realization that, oh, actually, I'm just going to bring food, because those are those basic things in super grief where it's just like the basic needs, right? Of like, can we feed you? Or be in the same space and just sit without actually having to say anything. I love the hot beverage idea, where it's a cup of tea always works for me. And hot beverage, that's from The Big Bang Theory, my favorite show. and I'm getting to a point where what's really part of my toolkit is asking myself what I need, and really tuning into that idea of just asking that question for me in the moment. What do I need right now? And it could be as simple as going to bed for a nap. It could be having solitude, or it could be connection with a dear friend. So I think it's allowing ourselves space to even not have the answer to that question, and being okay with it.
I love that.
Right.
And Karen's just written, sometimes you just need to talk and vent it out. Yeah, totally. Yeah. And sometimes, one of the things that can stop me from reaching out for support is, it's true, sometimes I just need to say words. I just need to say all of the things that need to be said. I don't need any of those things to be fixed. I don't need any answers to those things. And I know for me, sometimes I can hesitate in reaching out because I don't even know if I can string a sentence together. And like you said earlier, I just want somebody to be with me, and to create space for whatever is there, whatever mess is there.
Yeah.
So, do you have someone in your life that can hold that kind of space for you? And, and again, it's with the kind of emergency preparation discussion. We have a plan as a family as to where we'll meet in the yard if something goes wrong, and what we'll take with us, and having those conversations beforehand, so that when you're in the situation, you know what to do. You don't have to really think it through and expend energy that you really don't have and trying to figure it out.
I love that. It really speaks to that muscle memory idea of school drills, where they do them so often just for us to have muscle memory around it, where you're not having to think. You just, oh, I know I go there, which is interesting. I never thought of that before, of having that kit be more of a unconsciously embedded.
Right. Because, just again, if you're on the ship and the storm's happening, well, you're, even if you think about a plane crash analogy, all of these cheerful analogies.
Right.
They were pulling up, but
but they're so true. It's all prep, right?
So true. When there's an emergency on the plane, they go through the the little folder that's got, oh, it's this kind of emergency. You do 1, 2, 3, 4, and the reason they've done that is because they know for sure that in those situations our brain works differently. It's handling things. Handling things completely differently. Okay, so the next point, and maybe the closing point as we reach our 20 minutes, that I want to make is, I don't know if we're overly good at actually creating the space we need to go through these periods in our lives, because our modern lives are so structured, are so, to-do list, get things done oriented. Just even thinking about how the world of work goes for folks in our audience who are in the 9-to-5 world and have workplaces to go to, maybe you get 1 day's bereavement leave, maybe you get 2, maybe you get 3, maybe you get none.
Maybe, yeah.
There's this expectation that things are contained and that they happen in this kind of time period. And if you do X, Y, Z, you'll be okay. And that's really not reality. So I think that, and there's a whole bunch of other things I think that really feed into this way of thinking and being as well. And I think social media plays a big part in this, that sometimes we can feel like we're all alone in the things that we're experiencing. And maybe we're experiencing things that we're not strong like other people, or we're not this like other people, or there's something wrong with me because of the depth of emotion and pain that I'm feeling that I can't fix or do anything with. And actually that's a big trap, to think that you can actually fix anything as well. But this feeling of isolation around the pain that we're feeling, and there's this beautiful exercise which we can kind of just do simply together, of just taking yourself out and imagine yourself going up into space and just seeing the planet, and taking some comfort, hopefully, in knowing that at any given moment there are millions, if not billions, of people on the planet who are experiencing challenging times, who are experiencing pain, who are experiencing these universal human feelings. And at the same time, there are millions upon perhaps billions of people who are laughing, who are experiencing joy, who are experiencing the other range of the full human experience. We're never alone in what we're experiencing, even though it's unique to us. The situations are unique to us. The feelings and the challenge of them are fairly universal.
Yeah. I have a question for you, Morna, in terms of just having the space, this 20 minutes to share where you're at. Does that help, or what's your feeling around this space right now?
It does help. It helps when I feel like acknowledging reality always helps me.
Yeah, getting real, right?
Yeah, getting real always helps me. Being able to name things always helps me. Creating space for myself always helps me. And again, just to dissect this word help for a moment, What's the goal? Well, for me, maybe it's just a moment of peace, or a glimpse of maybe one day I'm going to feel different again. Maybe the situation is going to be different. Maybe there's just a glimmer of a different piece of it that I can notice. And also knowing that everything changes. That is another universal truth. Emotions come and go, situations come and go, we come and go, literally. You know, if we think about the lifespan of the universe and our tiny little speck that is us, all feelings shift and change. So, you know, it's going to be okay. And then it's not going to be okay again. And then it's going to be okay. And every time we're going through these periods, we're learning more and more about ourselves and how we operate. And, you know, I was reminded the other day of the idea of the window of tolerance, which I'm going to just go like that about, you know, just when things are going well and we're fully healthy and we're emotionally well, we've got a really big window of tolerance for things, you know, and in more challenging times, our windows go down. So instead of trying to fight that, and what if we recognized it and gave ourselves what we need, so that I'm going to use the word, so that we're able to more skillfully navigate the challenging times we're in.
Thanks, Morna, for your vulnerability today and just sharing. It was nice. It was nice to hear you and be with you and listen. And whoever's, you know, ends up watching the show, I think will be able to relate to the challenges that you're facing and that we all do throughout our life.
Thanks, Kim. And if you are watching, and if you watch the replay, we'd love to know, you know, some of what you experience in challenging times, some of what you do to help yourself move through it. And again, if you are looking for a community of support, if you're looking to be in a circle of women who get it and who are alongside you when times are going great and alongside you when times are going more challenging, then check out Life Design Lab. Okay.
Sweet.
Is that our show?
That's it.
You know, I just want to say this before we wrap up. Something.
I love
it. We've got 2 Karens watching. I love it. This is the show for Karen. If your name is Karen, Karen.
The Karen show.
Yeah, there's something I want to say. Like, so many moments during this show, I forgot we were doing a live show.
I know, right?
Chatting to my mate Kim about stuff that we're broadcasting all over the planet. All right, see ya.
On that note.
Bye everyone. We'll see you next week.